my opponent talks about how prostitution is the oldest profession, so it should be legal. But just because prostitution is the oldest profession does not mean that it's the safest. And if we're going around, doing some legal things that were harmful to other human beings, I do not think that it should be legal. Okay, and according to the Ministry of Justice in New Zealand, the majority of sex workers interviewed felt that the PRA, which is like the police, could do little about violence that occurred. The majority felt sex workers were more likely to report incidents of violence to the police, and the willingness to carry the process to the court is less common. So that also talks about how even though prostitution would be legal, because it is legal in New Zealand, they're less likely to carry it out. They'll report it to the police, but then after they get to the police, and the police are saying, oh, well, let's take it to court because you have a valid claim, the prostitutes are less likely to take it to court. Also, according to Blue Campaign, with human trafficking, there's hidden crimes, and they're less likely to talk about it to the police because of language barriers, fear of the actual traffickers, and or fear of law enforcement. So I believe that even if we make it legal, it won't create a better situation for the prostitutes, and it won't make them seek justice or actually get justice more. Also, my opponent talks about legal brothels in Nevada, and this is a study from the Los Angeles Times in 2015, and legal Nevada brothels are actually declining. Only a few of the legal brothels make profit, Flint said. Most clients pay a few $100s per visit, special requests, and there's a lot on the menu that drive the bill even more. Flint said that his last budget for political contributions made by the Nevada Brothel Owners Association reflected the plunge in the industry's fortune, dropping from $100,000 annually to $20,000. So it's not true that the Nevada brothels are actually increasing in revenue, they're decreasing in revenue, showing that prostitution isn't really a good business. Another thing that my opponent talks about is the protection of prostitutes. And I don't believe that even if it's legal, prostitutes can be protected. I think that it's too hard to protect someone in an intimate situation as sexual intercourse is, to where you can make sure that the prostitutes never get abused, never get hurt. And I think even if they're physically abused, even if they're prevented from physical abuse, they can't be prevented from the mental abuse that they suffer from. And then according to Melissa Farley, she talks about the prostitution and sexual violence, and she says that prostitution is described as psychological damage, and it's far worse than the physical damage that they have to endure. She says that it is internally damaging. You become your own mind and what people say of you. And I know that most people don't have a good image of prostitutes to begin with. So I think that that's why, according to prostitution facts, 75% of women in escort prostitution had attempted suicide. So I believe that even if we were able to physically protect prostitutes, we wouldn't be able to mentally protect them. I also think that prostitution leads to more drug use. So the 40 to 50% of streetwalkers, according to the Prostitute Paradox, have used IV drugs over the past decade. And because of their use of drugs and because of their sexual intercourse, they are HIV stereotypically positive. Another thing is that my opponent talks about how the prostitution and legalized brothels will help have condom checks and reduce STDs. But in fact, STDs won't decrease even with condom checks. According to Jeffrey J. Burrows, he states in HIV and prostitution, what's the answer? He says, even if prostitutes are being tested every week for HIV, she will test negative for at least the first 4 to 6 weeks, and possibly the first 12 weeks after being infected. If we assume that he or she takes only 4 weeks to become positive, because there is an additional lag time of 1 to 2 weeks to get the results back, there will be at best a window of 6-week period for the prostitute to know whether she is HIV positive. And the average prostitute services between 10 to 15 clients a day. This means that while the test is becoming positive and the results are becoming known, the prostitute may expose 630 clients to HIV. So I think that even if we had a regular condom check, and even if brothels were making sure that prostitutes were not having STDs, it won't prevent the spread of STDs through prostitution. I think that 630 clients is a lot to have HIV positive. And then sex workers are 10 times more likely to get HIV compared with the general population due to an increased likelihood of not consistent condom use, violence, criminalization, and marginalization. So I believe that even if we use condoms, I believe that prostitutes will still spread STDs. I believe that legalizing prostitution won't decrease violence. I also believe that legalizing prostitution, we shouldn't legalize prostitution just because it is the oldest and just because it's the oldest job.